Welcome to another quiet journey into the past. Tonight, allow your mind to drift far away from the present, to a time when marble villas shimmered beneath the Mediterranean sun, when the streets echoed with the slow rhythm of sandals on stone, and when the affairs of an empire were decided by candlelight and whispered voices. This is not a story of battle or glory, but of indulgence, excess, and quiet consequence. A story buried under layers of time and dust, where fragments of dinnerware and fading letters tell of a feast that ended not in joy, but in silence. Close your eyes. Let the tension in your body melt into softness. As the world outside fades, we'll journey inward into ancient Rome, into the shadows of its banquets and the lives of those who attended. But before we reach the infamous evening where death came quietly to a Roman dining hall, let us first step into the gentle rhythm of daily life in the eternal city. Imagine yourself in Rome, not as an emperor or gladiator, but as someone more ordinary, perhaps a well-off merchant, or a minor official in the city's bustling bureaucracy. Your home is nestled within the tightly packed insulae, the apartment buildings of the working class, or perhaps a domus if you are fortunate. The morning begins not with an alarm, but with light, soft, golden light slipping through wooden shutters. The air is cool, touched with the scent of olive oil and wet stone. Outside, the streets are just beginning to stir. Bakers open their ovens, sending warm, yeasty aromas into the air, while street vendors call out softly, offering garum, olives, and flatbread to passers-by. You rise and wash using water from a clay basin. There is no soap as we know it, only sand, olive oil, or ash used to cleanse the skin. You dress in your tunic simple linen, belted at the waist. If you're of a higher class, a toga may follow, though most Romans found it impractical for daily wear. Breakfast is light, a piece of bread dipped in wine, or perhaps dates with cheese. Then you step into the steady rhythm of Roman life. The streets are alive now. The forum hums with politics, gossip, and deals. Merchants shout prices. Scribes scratch wax tablets. At public fountains, citizens gather to fill their amphorae, pausing to chat beneath the watchful gaze of statues that line the roads. The clamor is constant, but it has its own cadence, a heartbeat of the empire. As a minor official, your day might be spent copying decrees, hearing disputes, or escorting citizens to the magistrate. Or perhaps you run a shop, selling spices from Egypt, wool from Gaul, or glass from the East. Life is structured but not rushed. Time bends around sunlight, not clocks. Lunch comes in the early afternoon, a larger meal of bread, legumes, perhaps salted fish or boiled eggs. Watered wine accompanies nearly every meal, for plain water is often suspect. For those with means, the afternoon is reserved for rest. The heat presses down like a blanket, and shutters are closed against the sun. You recline not in a bed, but on a couch, the same kind used for dining. Sleep comes easily. As shadows lengthen, the city changes. Temples glow in the waning light. Musicians gather in squares. Lovers stroll by the Tiber. You prepare for Cinna, the evening meal, not just a time to eat, but to converse, debate, and, if you are among the wealthy, to impress. And it is here that we begin to sense the deeper layers of Roman life. The Romans did not simply dine. They transformed eating into ritual, an elaborate display of status, sophistication, and sometimes shocking indulgence. So as you bathe in warm water at the public baths, scraped clean by a strigil, perfumed with oil, know that tonight's dinner may be more than a meal. It may be a performance, a show, a secret stage for power, desire, and sometimes danger. Because tonight we will attend one of these feasts, a gathering that would start like many others, with laughter, toasts, and song, but would end with silence and death. Let's now follow the host, a powerful Roman whose invitation drew the city's elite, a man whose ambitions and appetites would shape what came next. Segment 2, Biography or Event. The Party of Gaius Vettius Restitutus. Let's dim the lights of imagination and open the marble doors of a Roman villa somewhere in the shadow of Mount Vesuvius in the year 78 CE. The host's name was Gaius Vettius Restitutus, a freedman turned wealthy merchant known for his connections, his ambition, and his appetite for spectacle. His villa in Pompeii, newly renovated, shimmered with imported frescoes and mosaic floors so intricate that guests often paused in the atrium just to admire the tiles before greeting their host. But tonight was no ordinary cena. This was a convivium, a proper feast with wine, entertainment, and a tightly curated guest list. It was meant to show that Gaius was not merely wealthy, but cultured, rum, and refined, that he had risen above his past. Servants scurried in and out, silent and efficient, as torches cast flickering golden light on the marble statues lining the peristyle. Birds chirped in the courtyard, unaware that their cages were only temporary props for the night's illusion of opulence. Guests began to arrive just before dusk. Local magistrates, poets, a couple of retired military men, and even a visiting senator from Rome who had, allegedly, once dined with the Emperor Vespasian himself. They reclined on couches arranged in a horseshoe shape, the triclinium, each covered in cushions of dyed wool. The air smelled of cinnamon, roasted boar, and roses. Slaves moved among them with trays of appetizers, olives stuffed with fish paste, honey-glazed dormice, and spiced wine from the east. But what began as a celebration slowly took on a stranger tone. Some say it started with the wine stronger than usual, mixed not just with herbs, but with something more potent. Others recall the entertainment, a performer dressed as the god Bacchus, dancing wildly, smashing amphorae, pouring wine into the mouths of guests while shouting about fate, fortune, and death. Then came the dishes, a peacock stuffed with fish, stuffed with another bird, with its feathers reattached for dramatic flair, a boar with live birds released from its belly, a dessert molded into the shape of a severed head. Guests laughed uneasily. Gaius, meanwhile, grew louder. He toasted the emperor. He insulted a poet's wife. He ordered music, then demanded silence. He bragged of his villa's hidden chamber, a special dining room below ground, where the air was chilled, and the walls were painted with scenes of the underworld. And so, as the night deepened and torches dimmed, Gaius invited his guests to descend. It was a room built to impress and disturb. Painted with images of Hades and Charon, the ceiling glittered with crushed glass to mimic stars. Tables were set with black cloth. The slaves wore masks of death, and at the center of the room, beneath a fresco of Persephone's abduction, stood the final course, a roasted pig carved open, revealing not meat but fruit dyed red and stuffed with coins. Gaius declared, "Tonight we dine as if it's our last, because in the end, death dines with all of us." Nervous laughter followed. Some tried to leave, but the wine was strong. The doors, some whispered, were barred. No one knows exactly what happened next, only that by dawn the party was over, and Gaius was dead. His body was found slumped near the table, mouth stained dark with wine. Some said it was poison. Others claimed it was a fit of madness or divine punishment for mocking the gods of the underworld. Whatever the cause, the feast became legend. Some survivors refused to speak of it again. Others retold the story with growing embellishment, that the boar bled real blood, that the masks had whispered that Hades himself had visited the chamber. And so this bizarre Roman party lived on, not just in records or rumors, but in the walls of that very villa preserved by strange fate, when Mount Vesuvius erupted the following year and buried Pompeii in ash. And that ash, archaeologists would later find banquet couches, bronze cups, frescoes, and near a mosaic floor, the bones of a man, perhaps Gaius himself reclining, as if still hosting, still toasting. forever frozen at the end of one strange fatal night. Segment 3, Cultural Mystery, Feasting with Death, Rome's Dark Rituals and Hidden Messages. Roman banquets were never just about food. They were performances, carefully orchestrated displays of wealth, status, identity, and sometimes memento mori. Memento mori, remember you must die. It was a common Roman idea, not whispered in secret, but painted on walls, engraved on goblets, spoken at feasts. In a world of emperors, plagues, and unpredictable gods, the line between life and death was always blurred. And many Romans, especially the newly rich, turned that anxiety into spectacle. At parties like Gaius's, it wasn't unusual for hosts to hire actors dressed as skeletons to pass out wine or have desserts shaped like funeral offerings. Some dining rooms even featured murals of dead men eating beside the living. It sounds morbid to us, but to Romans, it was a reminder. Enjoy life now, before it slips away. That's what made the feast of Gaius Vettius Restitutus so strange and so Roman. But was it real? Historians argue over the details. There are scattered references in Letters 1 and a local magistrate's complaint to Rome about dangerous theatrics among freedmen. Archaeologists did uncover a subroom in a villa near Pompeii, bearing imagery of the underworld and signs of sudden abandonment, toppled goblets, scorch marks on a mosaic floor, and carbonized fruit dyed red. Coincidence, or the traces of that bizarre final meal? And what of the Chamber of Hades? Some scholars believe it may have been inspired by the cult of Dionysus, a mystery religion popular in the region. Its initiates believed that death was an illusion, that the soul could be freed through ecstasy, wine, and ritual descent into symbolic death, followed by rebirth. The room itself may have been a ritual space. The feast a reenactment. Gaius, perhaps, trying to impress not just mortal guests, but the gods themselves. And that would explain the final toast. Tonight we dine as if it's our last. Because in the end, death dines with all of us. Not a drunken boast, but a prayer. In this view, Gaius's death wasn't a tragedy or an accident. It was a sacrifice. A man trying to cross the boundary between the living and the divine and not returning. There's a Latin phrase found carved on a Pompeian tombstone: post-mortem nulla voluptas. After death, there is no pleasure. To the Romans, this wasn't just a warning, it was a challenge. Live deeply, feast fiercely, but never forget who's watching from the shadows. Segment 4, Life at the Top, the elite who dined like gods. While the mysterious feast of Gaius Vettius Restitutus haunts the shadows of Roman memory, the lives of Rome's true elite were no less bizarre or decadent. Imagine stepping into the dining hall of Emperor Elagabalus. The ceiling, painted with constellations, could open mechanically, raining rose petals down on guests. Sometimes, too many petals. Ancient sources claim that at one banquet, a guest suffocated beneath the floral avalanche. Whether truth or rumor, the message was clear. Elagabalus dined like a god, and you were there by his grace. But it wasn't just emperors. Take Trimalchio, the fictional character from the Satyricon, inspired by real nouveau rich freedmen. At his infamous feast, he served dishes shaped like the zodiac, birds cooked inside pigs, and a fake funeral for himself during the dinner. He lay in a coffin, wine goblet in hand, toasting his guests. Absurd? Yes, but this was satire rooted in reality. It reflected a Rome where power, performance, and prestige were inseparable. To dine at the table of a senator or patrician was to enter a theater of dominance. From gold leaf plates to snow-cold wine in summer, everything was curated to impress and intimidate. Even the seating mattered, the best spots reserved for the most powerful. The farther you sat from the host, the lower your status. And the food? Dormice stuffed with nuts, flamingo tongue, jellyfish, honey roasted ants. and sauces made from fermented fish guts garum, the ketchup of the ancient world. To modern tastes, it sounds revolting, but in Rome, the rarer and more extravagant, the better. Even indigestion was a badge of excess. Elite Romans often ended meals with induced vomiting, not because of sickness, but to make room for more. It wasn't gluttony, they called it sophistication. In their world, a feast was a flex, a way to display wealth, cultivate alliances, or humiliate rivals. Invitations could build a career or destroy one. And yet, beneath all the indulgence, lurked anxiety. These elite knew their fortunes could flip overnight. Emperors were assassinated, senators exiled, patricians bankrupted. One wrong word at the wrong banquet could mean disgrace or death. So they feasted while they could, the same way Gaius did, perhaps. The same way all of Rome did, knowing that every banquet might be their last. Conclusion, Rome feasted while the empire burned. So as the moonlight falls over the silent ruins of Pompeii, and as the laughter of long-dead guests fades into the dust, you might wonder, was it worth it? The extravagance, the danger, the spectacle. For the Romans, perhaps it was. They believed life was fleeting and death was always near. So they celebrated with wine, song, and spectacle, even if it killed them. Gaius Vettius Restitutus, if he truly existed, left no legacy of conquest or empire. Only whispers of a final feast that became his grave. But in that, he was utterly Roman, because in ancient Rome, to eat richly, to die strangely, and to be remembered in stories was a kind of immortality. Now, as you drift away into sleep, imagine the flicker of oil lamps, the murmur of toasts in Latin, the soft clinking of goblets raised to the gods, and know that history, even at its most bizarre, is never truly forgotten, not while we still tell its stories. Good night, traveler of time. Sleep well.